No, I hate being on camera.
This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here with Mike Weersing in Trinity Bellwods Park, Toronto, and we are looking at his wines from Pyramid Valley Vineyards in New Zealand. How are you today, sir?
I'm good.
So, how did a gentleman like yourself, studied in the liberal arts, get into winemaking?
I just got to an age where what I was doing, which was editing and curating, didn't seem to be. It wasn't going to give me the lifestyle that I required, which is living in the middle of nowhere and working for myself. And the wine was, as is so often the case in the wine world, it was an interest that became a hobby, that became a passion, that became an obsession, and it started to take up all my available income and free time. And so I thought, well, I might as well look into that.
So you worked all over the world before you settled in New Zealand. What was it that made New Zealand the place that you wanted to set down your roots, particularly when it came to making wine?
Yeah, I studied in Burgundy and spent a couple of years there in school and doing stage, and then I was living in a VW van, and I spent another 5 or 6 years sort of driving around Europe and catching jobs with my heroes, and started looking for a place to plant Pinot Noir with a specific list of soils and climate and topography and geology, and looked in California and Oregon and Australia and Portugal and New Mexico and all over New Zealand, and eventually found my way to the Pyramid Valley in North Canopy in New Zealand.
And what was it that made that site so special for you?
One of the things, without admitting that I've been completely brainwashed by the French, one of the things that you see working in Europe is that there's this empirical understanding of happy marriages between varieties and soils, and because I knew I wanted to grow Pinot Noir, I knew I wanted to look for clay limestone soils. The reason for that is that Pinot is a variety that has all the aromatics in the world, but it tends to be a little bit lean. Clay fleshes out any variety, no matter where you are, that's planted on clay. And it also tends to be low in anthocyanin. It's the only vinifera grape. It's funny, the Burgundians have insisted for a very long time that Pinot is not vinifera, but that it's actually the grape that is native to that central part of France.
Yes, I've read about that before. I just thought it was a load of hullabaloo. But
well, so they say. I mean, everybody likes to think that it's just the Burgundians claiming the variety as their own, except that every single vinifera red grape is 2/3 skin tannin to 1/3 seed tannin, except Pinot. And Pinot is exactly the opposite. It's exactly the reverse.
Right, okay.
So it may very well not be vinifera, and it may be the wild grape of the central part of France. Anyway, because Pinot is aromatic, but it's low in anthocyanin, and it doesn't age very well, clay limestone soils are perfect for it because clay fleshes it out, and limestone girdles the flesh and gives you longevity and gives you structure. Mm-hmm. If I were looking to plant Syrah, or if I were looking to plant Gamma, I would have looked for an entirely different soil.
What is it that differentiates your wines from the other wineries in your region? What is it that makes Pyramid Valley so special in your mind?
As far as the site goes, it's the combination of soil and climate. The French have, the Europeans in general, have this idea of the cultivable limit, which means you plant a variety at a place where it requires low yields, a good season, exigent viticulture to get the grape ripe. And that is where you have the most elegance, delicacy, complexity, and the most transparency. That is where the grape has the best possibility to become a vehicle for showing nuances of site and soil. So Syrah at its cultivable limit is in the northern Rhone.
Yes, yeah.
You can plant Syrah in the Languedoc-Roussillon and make a nice wine, but it will always be sort of grape-driven rather than site-driven. Chardonnay at its cultivable limit is in Chablis, or if you want bubbles, then it's in Champagne. And so we were looking for that, and I think we found that by going inland. but also for looking for the soil, which, as I say, it's not to ape Burgundy in any way. It's just every variety has an affiliation with a certain soil. Gamay has an affiliation with granite and schist, and Pinot Noir just happens to have an affiliation with clay limestone.
We were just talking about natural wine and what that means to you, and I find it quite fascinating, your take on that, and also your take on yeast and natural yeasts and yeasts that are indigenous to the specific vineyards. Would you mind expanding upon that for a moment?
No problem at all. As far as the yeasts go, we ferment every single wine with a yeast culture that we begin in that block in that season. And it seems to me that if you accept, as we all do eventually, that the magic of wine, that the wonder of wine is that it has this incredible capacity to become a kind of liquid geography and talk about nuances of site and soil and season, you have, as a winemaker and a wine grower, you have almost a moral obligation to aim for that. That is what wine does. I like beer, but beer doesn't do that. I like vodka, but vodka doesn't do that. So this is what wine does. So if you're trying to express, if you want every single bottle of wine to be a kind of time capsule, a window on a certain place in a certain season, then you need grapes from that place and time, and you need yeast from that place and time. So we do vineyard pied de couve. We do yeast cultures in every block every year. I'm deeply sympathetic to the movement of natural wine. I'm deeply disappointed and frustrated with a lot of the people who call themselves natural winemakers. Natural wine for me, natural doesn't mean anything. It's like calling your vineyard sustainable. It doesn't mean anything. There's no parameters. Natural for me simply means no additive. The yeasts came from the vineyard. You never added bacteria. You didn't filter. You didn't add enzymes. You didn't add bentonite. You didn't add anything. It was just grapes plus yeast plus time equals wine. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, I'm very happy to make a small sulfur addition to make the wine primary and fresh and delicious and age-worthy and transportable.
It was interesting when you said that, because I had never really thought about the fact that winemakers should be making wines that taste great at the winery but should still be stable enough to make it to their final port of call and taste the way the winemaker intended.
One of the things that I hear all the time, and I read this with great frustration, is that no sulfur wines don't travel. If no sulfur wines don't travel, if they don't ship well, it's not because of the fact that they have no sulfur, it's because they're under cork. And this is not a plea for screwcap, because I don't love screwcap, it's better than cork. The problem with cork is that you have a cork in the bottle, you bottle the wine, you've got inert gas in the headspace. The first thing that happens is when that wine rises in temperature by 3 or 4 degrees, I'm not talking about getting up to 40 or anything like that, but just by a few degrees, the wine expands, it pushes that inert gas past the cork, not through the cork, but between the cork and the glass, which is why every cork is different. When the wine cools again, you create a vacuum, and perhaps you draw oxygen in that first couple of goes, but I think more importantly what you do is you draw dissolved CO2 in the wine, which is a great preservative and a natural preservative. It's the CO2 left from the fermentation. You draw that into the headspace, and the next time it warms, you push that out. So this happens every single time.
So you're taking that preservative out of the wine if it's under cork.
I was having dinner with a friend of mine that I worked with in the Mosel, Ernie Lozen, and Ernie said I would love to bottle everything under screwcap, but my clients won't admit it. There was a wine writer there at the time, and Ernie and I were talking, and I said, corks don't work. And the wine writer said, that's not true. I just had an 1847 Gruau La Rose, and it was under the original cork, and it was perfect. And I said, where did you have the wine? And he said, at the chateau. Corks don't work in the modern world because there's a constant temperature fluctuation. If you put a wine under cork and you put it 3 stories down in limestone, and the temperature and the humidity don't move for 150 years, yeah, maybe the cork will work. But if you put it on a truck to a port, to a ship, to a truck, to a retail space to a closet to a whatever, you're constantly getting that even if it's careful, even if it's well looked after, you're getting the 3 or 4 degree fluctuation in temperature, and that means that every single cork is going to fail you to some degree. And I spoke with an English wine writer not too long ago, and he said, "Well, that's the lung of the wine," which is complete bullshit. And
the lung of the wine.
Yeah.
Right.
And he said, I don't want all 12 bottles in the case to taste the same, which is also complete bullshit. They're never going to taste the same because you're going to have them with different fruit and different company and in a different circumstance and at different moments. But at the same time, if I'm a winemaker and I ship the wines that I make under cork to the other side of the world, essentially what I'm saying is that 11 of the bottles won't be as good as the 12th. And I think that's irresponsible because it never comes back to the winemaker.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today.
You're very welcome.
I'd just like to show off the t-shirt that you're wearing right now. This is t-shirt from Horse Meat Disco. We got this from Severino from Horse Meat Disco in London, UK. Question is, have you ever eaten horse meat and do you enjoy it?
No, I've eaten just about every other meat, and I would not have an issue with eating horse meat. This t-shirt was given to me by the man behind the camera, Jamie, and it seemed an immediate perfect fit, despite my oblong shape, because in some funny coincidental way, and I can't really describe it, wherever I go in the world, my immediate nickname becomes Stallion. Everybody just calls me Stallion. And it happens in Greece, and it happens in France, and it happens in Portugal. And
are you making this up?
No, no.
Okay.
Everybody just calls me Stallion, and you can understand why. I mean, look at me. Everybody calls me Stallion.
Yeah.
So it just seemed like the perfect shirt for me because I am the Stallion.
Certainly a stallion. Yes. Well, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today in your Horse Meat Disco t-shirt, Stallion, and we look forward to catching up with you perhaps next time down in New Zealand.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.